So there's a great scene in Breaking Bad where Walter White, the hero slash villain, is talking with a character named Mike Ehrmantraut. And Mike is recounting a story from his past where he had an opportunity to deal with a situation, but he took what he called a half measure. And the situation didn't turn out well without going into the gory details. And he concluded by saying, "No more half measures, Walter." And I think that statement kind of sums up my path to entrepreneurship. There's obviously a lot less violence and illegal activity in my story than in Breaking Bad, but lots of half measures. Because I didn't start out wanting to be an entrepreneur. I grew up, I loved science and math and taking things apart and figuring out how things worked. And I considered careers, medicine, physiotherapy, but ultimately decided on electrical engineering. So, and I never once chose to go or thought about going and studying business or becoming an entrepreneur. So I studied electrical engineering and computer science and got my first job working for a technology startup. And it was an amazing experience. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was getting the opportunity to work on stuff that really I shouldn't have been working on for quite a few years into my career just because it was a startup. And I got to meet my business partner, Mike Lockerbie, and we've worked on and off together since then. And the CEO of our company, Oliver, was really inspirational, and I admired how creative he was and how he could just twist your brain into knots. And he was a true entrepreneur, started and ran a lot of companies over the years, and this idea that you could start something and out of nothing just started to seem a bit compelling to me. But it's not that I did anything about it. It took me 12 years before I actually started a business. I had lots of entrepreneurial hobbies, lots of side projects that I worked on either by myself or with other people, but they're all side projects. I always had a job, and I've discovered that side projects don't work, at least not for me. For some, they do. Steve Wozniak designed the Apple I while he worked for HP, but I'm not Steve Wozniak. For me, having a full-time job was preventing me from succeeding as an entrepreneur. And it's fairly obvious when you have a full-time job, it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. And it's hard to have any credibility if you can't meet with clients during regular business hours. But the biggest reason I think it didn't work is because having a job removed the need for me to succeed as an entrepreneur, because I could tinker away forever and it wouldn't matter because I had a paycheck coming in. So I realized that I was going to have to jump in if I wanted to do this. And I realized that there was no perfect time to start a business. When you're early in your career, you don't have any experience, you don't really know anything, or if you think you do, you probably don't. And later in your career, you have the experience, but you have commitments, a mortgage payment, you got a family. And that's where I was at the point where my business partner, Mike, and I decided to start Bitstrata. Back in 2010, I was meeting with Oliver, the CEO of the company I first worked for, and we met once in a while, and I was showing him this little project I did. Had this little sensor box, talked wirelessly to this other box with 4 buttons and a display. Kind of a clunky thing. I was kind of proud of it. It worked, and it was a lot of work. And he was never afraid to tell you what he thought. And the iPad had just come out, and he said, "Well, why don't you just get rid of that junky thing and use an iPad for the user interface?" And it's like, yeah, that's a good idea. But there wasn't a practical way to make it talk to our electronics. Fast forward 2.5 years, and a half a dozen or more business ideas later, and I discovered through reading that Apple was supporting a new kind of wireless protocol called Bluetooth Low Energy. And this changed everything. Now we could put that technology in products, little pieces of electronics, and we could use mobile devices to be the user interface to get rid of these clunky industrial alarm panel type terminals. So was this a business idea? Well, not really. It was kind of a vague product concept. And was it the best idea that Mike and I had had? No, we had lots of great ideas, but we were certain that the industry would move this direction. So we quit our jobs, we started our company, got a little space over by the river at Ideas Inc. at River Landing there, and we opened the doors with no financial backing other than our own cash. So we spent our time cold calling people to try to get consulting clients. So we're both engineers, try to generate some revenue that we could use to fund the R&D. After 6 weeks, we had a client. We started doing the R&D, and we were off. But we still didn't really have a specific. We knew we could build this technology and do stuff with it. So we figured we still needed more mentoring. We're both engineers, not business people. So we joined, we signed up for a competition called the Tech Venture Challenge, which is put on by the university here, the Industry Liaison Office. And it provided mentoring to the finalists as well as a $50,000 grand prize. So let's do this. And there's another competition we joined too, both writing a business plan, and they were great. A great experience, a ton of work. But the thing that it really did is let us discover that we had a real flaw in that we had no focus. We had this idea, this technology we were building, and we knew we could use it, but we had to pick for what. Originally, we thought we would use it for oil well monitoring, but then regulatory hurdles were going to delay that. Then we wanted to build this technology that we could use to let other companies build products on top of that. But it was kind of vague, hard to market. So eventually, we decided to build this agricultural product. I come from a farm, and it was kind of, call it a simple application. So we went forward with that. We always favored coming up with an idea that no one else had done before. That's the big thing. But the problem is when it's an idea no one has done, you don't know if there's a market for it or not. So we opted to make a better version of a product that was already on the market, just using this new approach. Then you know there's customers because people are buying the existing products, and there's a supply chain and distribution channel. There's also competitors, but business is full of trade-offs. So 8 months after we opened our doors, we had launched our product, and we started shipping shortly after. And we've been selling that product ever since. It's been a ton of work, but demand has grown, and it's grown the company. We've expanded our team. We've got new products in development that we're excited to launch. Now, this is just my story. It's unique to me, and the path I've taken is perhaps may or may not work for anyone else. But the important thing is that the path that works is the one that lets you get your business off the ground. A lot of people like to categorize things and say, this works, that you have to do this, you can't do that. But I don't think you can view entrepreneurship that way, because with a lot of things in life you can, our society's built on it. But entrepreneurship is so unpredictable that you don't know, somebody else's experience is not necessarily relevant to what you're doing. So it's important to get feedback from people and take advice, but remember that people's advice is based on their background and their experience. They've never been in your exact situation. So I know when you're a child, there's a point where you sort of realize that your parents don't know everything. And it's kind of a scary time. And becoming an entrepreneur is kind of like that. You don't have anyone to ask anymore what the answers are. You can talk to people, but there's no parent or professor or manager to tell you what you should be doing. It's up to you. But I think you shouldn't be scared about that, because when you realize that no one knows the answer, it kind of empowers you to find it out for yourself. Thank you.